Hey guys, we're going to pick up where we left off today. I did a video just recently about the levels of psychological health for Enneagram Type 9. As I have done with all of my other numbers, I started at the bottom, which is level 9, which is the most unhealthy type of 9, and I've worked my way up. I got through 9, 8, 7, and 6 last time. We're going to pick up with 5 and see if I can get all the way up to level 1 in this video. I should. So when we're going into a 9 that's at a level 5 stage of psychological health, this is an average level 9. This is the point that you're going to see 9s start to check out like the very first time. This is if they've sunk down to this point, they are in a place where they feel like I have to start tuning other people out in order to maintain my homeostasis. It's kind of like I'm not going to survive unless I tune you people out. It's very minor at this point. These are 9s that are fully functional. They're active in life. They come home and they eat dinner with the family and they do the family game night and they go to the soccer practice and they do all of this. They're there. They keep up with everything. They're not absent. They're not making excuses to miss things. They're not putting up the wall and closing people out. They're still returning calls. They return text messages, but it's almost difficult to describe because they're physically there through all of it. They're physically present. They don't go anywhere. They talk and they engage and they seem like on the outside, they're going through the motions. And so it looks like behaviorally that nothing is wrong, but you'll kind of get this sense that emotionally they're not there and mentally they're not there. This is the point where, especially if you live with a 9, you're probably going to be the one that notices this. This is the point where you can be laying right in bed next to them. This will happen with me and my husband. If he's in this state for any period of time, we can lay right in bed next to each other. He can be giving me a back massage and it feels like I'm in the room all by myself. I can tell that he's not paying any attention to what he's doing. His mind is somewhere else. He's just checked out. You know what I mean? He started to check out. Physically there, emotionally gone, mentally gone. This is usually the point where I start getting calls from the couples that I see individuals and I see couples. If it's a couple, every single time, one or the other is a 9. And the person that's not the 9 is the one that initiates the session, right? In other words, the one that contacts me and says, hey, can you help us? And I already know what's going to happen. I can predict it every single time. I'll ask them, I'll say, okay, well, what are your types? Do you know? And they'll say, this is mine and this is theirs. And once I hear, theirs is 9, I'm like, okay, I know what's going to happen. They're going to come in here and start talking about the person who called me is going to talk about, well, they don't do anything for our family anymore. I do everything. They come home and they sit there and they talk and they play with the kids, but they don't actually help. I try to have serious conversations. They give me a couple of, half-assed answers and then they don't want to talk about it anymore. It's that kind of stuff. And the complaint is that the 9, whichever partner that is, isn't pulling their weight in the relationship and the other person's getting sick of it because they feel like they are investing more emotionally at that point than their partner, who is the 9. And to be fair, they probably are. But that's what it looks like when a 9 is at a level 5 stage of health, okay? Level 4, going up from there, a little bit healthier. This is the point where 9s aren't shutting people out at this point. They're still pretty connected to life and to themselves and to the relationships that they have. But this is where this I think is the first level where we start to see the anxiety set in for 9. It's not noticeable. I don't think they even notice it, to be quite honest with you. But what you'll see is this small tweak in behavior. This is where they start to make small concessions in order to just shut everybody up, and it's not a big deal. I don't want to deal with this, that kind of a thing. This is the 9 who starts agreeing to things that they don't necessarily want to agree to because it's like, if I say I don't want to do it, then it's going to hurt their feelings, and then, I'm going to feel bad, and I really don't want to feel bad about it. I'm just going to do it so I don't have to feel bad. You know what I mean? This is the 9 who will tell you that they have an opinion that they don't necessarily have because they're afraid that if they disagree with you, even if it doesn't offend you, they may be afraid that you're just going to want to argue about the opinion. And if they don't have the energy for that, or if they're just not genuinely that interested enough in the subject to have the argument, they're just going to tell you what they want to hear so that they don't have to deal with it, because that is just too much energy. They don't want to deal with it. That kind of a 9. And it doesn't even have to be deceptive like that. In other words, what I'm trying to say is they're not necessarily people that have bad intentions. It could be something as simple as, if you, I always go back to restaurant analogies. If you wanted to go to dinner with them and you said, hey, I would really like to have barbecue, but they really wanted, I don't know, Mexican food, you would say barbecue, and they would say, yeah, okay, I could do barbecue too, that's fine. Well, what they really wanted was Mexican food, but they just immediately conceded to what you wanted, because in their mind, it's just, it's not so bad. Again, minimizing. It's like, okay, well, I guess I could do that too. It's fine. Food is food. You know what I mean? A more self-actualized 9, it's not that they're necessarily demanding, but they are confident enough in who they are. And that's not even it. They're really more emotionally stable enough to verbalize, hey, I don't want that. I want this. Okay. And I'm gonna build on that as we go. Actually, we're gonna go up. Getting into the healthy levels for type 9, really, really rare. It's rare for anybody, myself included, when you start talking about people that are at level 3, 2, and 1, right? Excuse me. Nines at, excuse me, a level 3 state of health. Okay, so what I like to say is this is where 9s kind of take on this, I call it the counselor archetype. These are the people that they are really, really good listeners. They're really safe. They're really gentle. They're really kind. They're really accepting of other people. They're very, very friendly. They go anywhere that they want, and when they've left, they've made 10,000 friends, and they didn't even try. People just liked them because they were so likable and so easygoing, and you know what I mean? It was, they're just easy to get along with. People at this point, I've noticed, start feeling really, really drawn to 9s that are at a level 3 state of health, a level 3, level 2, and level 1, all of them. But you really start to see that at level 3. 9s at this point are emotionally stable enough inside. Emotionally secure is probably a better way to say it. That they can listen and take on the burdens of other people's problems without feeling overwhelmed by that. So 9s in this situation, they make great listeners. People usually seek them out for advice. People start telling all of their secrets to them. They are very trustworthy people. This is the point where they start to make really good mediators. You can get 2 people that are not getting along, and a 9 that is at least at a level 3 stage of health. You plop them right down in the middle, and they will have that shit cleared up in 2 minutes. It's amazing. You'll have these 2 people, they're like fuming at each other, and this 9 just kind of comes in, and they saunter in real nice, and they're like, hey guys, what's up? What's going on? And they're all like, blah, 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 and this and this and this. And the 9's like, oh, okay, so I hear what you're saying. So basically they did this and you feel like that. I'm like, yeah. It's like, yeah, I can get that. And he probably did this, which makes you feel like that, right? Okay, well, guys, let's think about it. If we get upset like this, is it really going to fix anything? There are things we could do to get around this. Don't you think? We're all adults. And so they're like in there, and they're all of a sudden they're just like mediating this situation, and they're completely cool the entire time. And everybody else is in chaos, and we're all losing our minds. And the 9s are just sitting there like, hey, guys, there's a really simple way to solve this. If we'll all just calm down, we could get it done. So they're really great mediators. They are fantastic communicators at this point. It amazes me how many 9s, like when they are really self-actualized and when they have got really good emotional coping mechanisms on board, they're fantastic communicators. And very specifically, what I have seen, the way that I see that play out is they almost kind of, they're good at speaking for people that can't speak for themselves. Does that make sense? I'll give you an example. When I was growing up, I was subjected to a ton of abuse, terrible, terrible abuse. And so one of the side effects of that, that I experienced, and that almost every abuse survivor experiences, is that you grow up and you become an adult and you do not have what we call it not having a voice, which doesn't mean that I can't talk. What it means is that I don't know how to express my truth. So what that means is if I have an opinion, I have no idea how to express that. If I have a feeling, I don't know how to express that because I've grown up in an environment that has taught me that if I be myself, I'm punished. I have to adhere entirely to the will of another person or something bad happens to me. That's what abuse is, right? So I did not get to a point where I could start voicing my feelings, my opinions. I didn't get to a point where I could start telling people who I really thought I was until I was 27 years old. I'm 29, so that should paint a picture for you, right? Someone like me could have really used a 9 that was at a level 3, at least, state of health at that point, because 9s will find people like me that couldn't speak for themselves. And 9s, they'll kind of listen. Again, great listeners at this point. They're like counselors. They'll listen, they don't judge, they take what you say, and they'll say, okay, and they'll do the mediator thing where they go with you, and they'll say, hey, look, this is really all she's trying to say. I know that it comes off like this, but this is where she's at. You know, she's not trying to be offensive. She doesn't understand how to tell you this. You know what I mean? And so they start mediating between, this is 9 at level 3. It's so awesome. I'm going to give you a real life example. There's this guy that I used to work with, and he was talking about, after I left, they had somebody that worked there, had died, and it completely devastated, like, everybody that worked there. It was just, the boat was severely rocked. And he was telling me about how he thought it was bizarre, but it was like all of a sudden, all of these people started coming to him and approaching him. And he said this. He said he felt like all of a sudden he was a chaplain. He used the word chaplain because all of these people started coming up to him, approaching him, telling him like life secrets, and this is how I feel, and just completely unloading their burdens onto him. And he was telling me how he thought that was bizarre because he didn't solicit that. He was just kind of minding his own business and doing his thing. But people were approaching him as if he was this safe beacon in the middle of a shitstorm. And probably, I mean, to some extent, he probably was. It doesn't necessarily mean that he was consistently at that point at a level 3 state of psychological health, but you can pull traits sometimes from different levels given certain circumstances. So that's a really good example. That's what a 9 is when they're at a level 3 state of health. Moving up to a level 2, this is when you have a 9 that has really self-actualized. They are comfortable in what they believe. They're comfortable in who they are. They're comfortable in who they love. They're comfortable in what they feel, what they think, what they do, how they live. This is a 9 that doesn't feel like they have to explain anything anymore. This is a 9 that doesn't feel like they have to concede parts of themselves in order to protect themselves anymore. This is a 9 who knows that they have inherent value, whether or not anybody else realizes that, and they live life taking up the space that they should take. And it's kind of like, this is my ground, this is my space, I matter, and I'm here, and I'm going to do my thing, and they live their life. Very confident, very even-keeled, really nice person, a self-secure person, you know what I mean? Then we go up to level 1, which is the healthiest level for Enneagram Type 9. This is where 9s at this point really start to fully engage in life. And I don't mean physically. This whole time, through all of the levels of health, save for maybe the most unhealthy, right? 7, 8, 9. 9s are still functioning. They're living life. They get up, they have jobs, they work, they have families, they come home, they do the family stuff. Like, none of that changes. They've always done that. So I'm not talking about I'm not talking about activity. They've always been active. I'm talking about engaging. Engaging is the ability to be mentally and emotionally present in the moment as you act without dwelling too much on the past or worrying too much about the future. Difficult to do for anybody, but 9s, when they are at a level 1 state of psychological health, they're pulling this off. And it's so fantastic if you ever get to know one that's like that. And what I think has happened is, I think if they're at this point, they have had the revelation, excuse me, that bad things can happen. They can experience negative emotions. They can experience strong emotions. They can go through loss and pain and terror and whatever it is that you want to name that they're scared of. And it's like they understand now that no matter how bad the feeling gets, they can come out on the other side of that and still be okay. Which up to this point, I think is just a thought for them. But if they're at a level 1 stage of health, it's a belief, right? In other words, it's like a mantra. It's a lifestyle. They're living by it. You know what I mean? They don't feel the need to check out anymore because you don't have to check out when you know that you are emotionally capable of handling whatever life throws at you and coming out on the other side of that and still being okay. These are the 9s, especially just from a relational term, these are the 9s that can be completely honest with you about how they feel. They have healthy boundaries. They don't force what they want on you, and they can hear your response and not be scared or overwhelmed or offended or afraid. Does that make sense? They can come in and say, if my husband were like this, which I wish he were, but everybody wishes their partner was like the level 1, whatever their number was, right? If my husband were like this, what that would mean is he could come home and say, hey, Jen, you did X, Y, and Z earlier, and it really hurt my feelings. I don't deserve to be treated like that. I'm not going to tolerate it if you treat me like that again. He can say that and not worry about whatever it is that I do. It's like he can come into that situation and say, I don't really know how she's going to react. It doesn't matter. This is what I deserve, and I'm going to have to put my boundary up. And they're not mean about it. They're not forceful about it. They're just calm, very matter of fact, very straightforward, and they hear you. I could respond defensively. I didn't do that. I don't know what you're talking about. And he could stay present for that and have the conversation without losing his temper, without losing his cool, without withdrawing, without making excuses, without being stubborn, without the passive aggressiveness. But again, you've got to be a very self-actualized person, and you have got to have some really good coping skills on board. This is also, final thing I'll say, about 9s who are at a level 1 state of health. This is the place where they really start to take on these very influential leadership roles. They're not afraid to speak up. They're not afraid to start calling out what they see that's wrong. You know, they start challenging things like they choose to. You know what I mean? And people start to get behind that because they're like, wow, here's this person that's got the courage to speak out against the things that we've all been complaining about this whole time. And so they kind of become this rock that other people can lean against and can get behind. Now, to be fair, I've always said that out of all the numbers on the Enneagram, in terms of providing emotional support, unquestionably, like 9s are the rock. Literally, 9s are the Stonehenge of the Enneagram. In other words, they've always been there. You're not going to move them. You can put all the weight you want to on them, and they're still not going anywhere. They'll always be there. They are the Stonehenge of the Enneagram. So I think you really kind of start to see that analogy come out at this point, because this is just that point where they can take this is that point where not only can they handle what's going on inside of them. I mean, if you remember in my other video when we were talking about like average levels, especially the unhealthy levels, they get to the point where it's like they can't even hardly keep themselves together. So they literally start shutting everybody else out because it's like, I can't handle myself. Stop putting your problems on me, right? When they're at a level 1 stage of health, it's the complete opposite of that. Now we're looking at a 9 that's like, hey, I've got this shit together. Let me help you take yours on too. These are 9s that can really play the champion archetype. You know what I mean? Like if you need a champion, these are the 9s. They will completely defend your honor, you know, whatever that is. So very ambitious. This is, I want to touch on that too. This is the point where if you have a 9 and there's something that they've always wanted to do, it's not just talk. Up until this point, at least, especially in the average levels and lower, it's just talk. It's kind of like, well, you know, one day I'd kind of like to do this. And they say that year after year after year after year after year, every conversation. Well, you know, I don't know, one day I'd kind of like to do this, but they don't do anything to make it happen. They don't try to find someone who could help them. They don't find out what steps do they need to do that. Even if they find out the information, they don't necessarily act on it. It's just like they gather it and they put it away in their head, and they're kind of like, yeah, well, I mean, I don't know. One day when the time is right, I'll get to it. The time is right now, because this is the only time that you're alive. So if you want it, then get up and go get it. But that's a foreign idea to a 9 that's in an average or lower state of health. When they're at a level 1 especially, this is where you see 9s that are like, this is what I want in life, and I'm going to go and get it. Very assertive. They don't waste time. They make it happen. And this, again, is what we like character traits that they're taking on from type 3, because when 9s integrate into their healthy number, they take on the energy and the positive character traits of type 3. So they really pick up on the 3's ability to be independent, self-driven, ambitious, strong, somebody that people are drawn to and gravitate towards and can lean on. A lot of the natural leadership ability starts to come out, that kind of thing. Really fantastic people. I think they're fantastic people anyway, as you all know. I kind of tend to gravitate towards them, or they gravitate towards me, or both. Either way, I always find myself in some capacity or another in relationship with a 9, whether it's a family member or a friend or whatever it is. They're always there. Again, cockroaches. So, yeah, that's a little bit about finishing up the average levels and healthy levels for type 9. So, anyways, you guys know the drill. Comments, whatever it is, questions. I'll get to them when I can. Thanks.